So the idea is when we see these gills that are infected, because they are introduced in infected farms, of course, and these gills have been vaccinated, the question is, are they infected because the virus can escape this particular vaccine?
Hello, welcome to this edition of Meet the Expert, a new series of podcasts on swine disease management in practice presented by Boehringer Ingelheim. My name is Peter Best. For this podcast, we're going to talk about the European Research Awards on PRRS, which are sponsored by Boehringer Ingelheim. And to help us, we have Dr. Enrique Mathieu, who is Professor of Animal Health at the UAB University in Barcelona in Spain, and also a researcher at CRESA. Would you remind us, please, what is CRESA,
Yes,
Dr.
CRESA
Mathieu?
is the Research Center for Animal Health in Catalonia.
Thank you. And so you're chairman of this independent review board for this European PRRS Research Award. That's
Yes,
correct.
right.
How long have you been the chairman of this board? Because this is an annual award, isn't it?
Yes, this is my first year as a chairman, but I have been part of the board from the very beginning of this award.
And the board is composed of how many people, and
We're
where do they come from?
Five people coming from different countries in Europe.
And they represent academia, they represent practice?
Both. We have people from the practical part that are field veterinarians, and we have people from the academy.
So the most recent round of submissions, you've just reached a decision on the winners, have you?
Yes.
And how many submissions, more or less, did you receive? Was it sort of 10s or 20s or something
Yes,
like that?
normally because there is a little bit variation between the years, but normally we're in the range between 10s and 20s.
And do you look at them whether they're academic or practical relevance, or is that one of the considerations you take into account?
Yeah, unfortunately, we have more academic than proposals from the field, because one of the things that we would like to encourage is the participation of field veterinarians.
Is it easy to apply? Is this perhaps one of the reasons that veterinarians do not submit more often?
It's really easy. It's really easy. You only have to go to the website, you have to download the forms, and the forms are something like, what's your name, where do you work, what is your idea about this project, and what will be the impact for the swine industry and for the practical veterinarian, and that's all.
And so each of these awards, as I understand it, is 25,000 euros
Right.
per project, and the research project can cover any area of PRRS,
Right.
From diagnostics and veterinary practice and so on, right across the board. On this occasion, then, you've chosen three. That's normal each year that you would choose three award winners, each receiving 25,000 euros. Why did you choose these particular three, please? What were the standout points in the opinion of the independent board that you chair?
Yes, there is a set of criteria for the selection of the proposals, and in this criteria we consider on in one part of the criteria is about the practical application of the results. There is another part that is about the scientific idea, because we want to combine to have proposals that are sound from a scientific point of view, but also sound from a practical point of view. And then also we consider how feasible is that proposal in 1 year period, that is the time that is more or less allowed for that. And obviously that the amount of money is enough or close to enough for carrying out the work.
So if I was to look at the website PRRS.com, I would find how to apply, and I would find the criterion outlined there to give me an idea what sort of submission you're looking for, and also the form in which you find it acceptable. I don't know whether that's a one-page submission or what it is, but you can find all that information online, and as these three did. Now, these three you've chosen, I understand two of them are from Spain and one is from Denmark.
Right.
What were their particular points then? If I may take the one from Denmark, it's talking about repeated vaccinations. What was the particular point that you appreciated about that?
Yeah, in this proposal, the proponents address a situation that is very common. You are vaccinating the sows in your farm, you are vaccinating the sows every 3 or 4 months, and in spite of that, it looks like some sows can be negative in the test that you use for testing the immune response, or maybe you have some cells that are infected in spite of vaccination. And the idea was just to examine what happened in those cases, to have an idea of can be an kind of, let's say, a negative impact because of repeated vaccinations. We don't have an answer. This is the idea of the project, but just to understand those animals, those older cells that are negative for the routine tests, what is the real meaning of those animals in the farm?
Older being, could you give me some idea of what you mean by older?
In a very broad sense. I mean,
Yes.
older mean that have been vaccinated probably 10 times or
right.
something like
I
that.
see.
I mean, 2-year-old animals or something like that.
All right. And we know the protocol of vaccination has been correct each time. The vaccination itself, the protocol wasn't the question.
No.
It was just the effect.
This has been very, very evident from many years now that some particular animals, for some reason that we cannot understand at the present, had kind of negative response to so after repeated vaccination. In other animal models, this is known that can happen. It's kind of, let's say, habituation to the antigen simulation. We don't know in the case of birds, and this is exactly what this project tried to address.
Could it be host dependent or
Probably, most probably.
Animal to animal dependent?
Most probably.
Yes, and therefore the information from this study could be of real practical value in determining what the results of looking for immune reactions really mean in practice.
Right, it's exactly that.
And another is from a Spanish colleague, molecular traceability of the virus. Where are we with that particular subject then?
Yeah, the idea in that project is simple but very interesting. When you have a production system in which you have different farms that are connected,
yes,
because of the flow of the animals, for example, you are sending gills from one farm to the other, and then the animals that are raised in the farm, the fatteners, are sent to another place.
So
and
it's
so
a
on.
multi-site production system. Yes.
With several farms that are connected and probably different sources of gills within the company that is serving different farms in the system. One of the critical things is how the pathogens are moving all across the system, all across this network. Because going back to the idea of the biosecurity, I mean, this movement of the pathogens tell us what are the biosecurity breaches that we have in our system. And regarding PRRS, there is another thing. We can not only identify using these molecular techniques this flow of the pathogen within the system, but also permit us to do a very practical thing, that is to organize the shipment of animals and the use of the trucks. Because the idea is simple. I mean, if you are using a truck going from an infected premise to another building that is not infected, or going from farm infected with virus A to farm infected with virus B, then you are mixing everything in the system. So the rational use and the rational organization of the peak flow and the shipment can take advantage of this understanding by molecular tracing.
A really strong improvement in biosecurity,
right,
as a result of this, at a relatively affordable cost. A low cost.
Yeah.
So it is open to anybody with a multi-site production system, with on the advice of their veterinarian, to be looking at the possibility of doing this. If they decided, and they're not doing it already, what would be the first step in molecular traceability? What does that mean in terms of the first step?
Yeah, it's very simple, just sequencing.
Taking samples
yeah,
from each step.
Taking the animals that are...
Selected samples, one would choose particular animals at particular stages.
Yeah, since in a production system, the flow of the animals and the age of the animals, you can just target the things that are of interest for you.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are, for example, moving gills from site 1 to farm 2, 3, and 4, you can test gills before the exit from source farm to the other farm. So if you are identifying the virus that you have in the source farm, and then you can identify the virus in the destination farms, you can know more or less how this virus is moving in the system. And the good thing of the project, I think that a positive point is that this system can be translated not only to PRRS, but to any other pathogen that we want to trace in our system.
Is the project looking at something that's already happening to a degree, or is it looking at the earlier stages of the idea and seeing whether it is practically applicable?
Well, we have a lot of evidences in this type of systems that there are, the different strains that you can have in these systems can move within the system. And so we know that this happened just looking at OR5. The problem is that we don't have the whole picture. And we have just pieces of this picture, and the project try to have more or less a whole picture in a given situation.
You are listening to Meet the Expert, a new series of podcasts on swine disease management in practice presented by Boehringer Ingelheim. If you would like to know more about the subject we're discussing in this podcast, additional information is available offline.